My name is Chad Baptiste. I am an independent comic artist, resident to New York, formerly from Florida, naturally born and raised in Trinidad, and all around cool guy. Thinking back as far as I can, I remember as a kid growing up in Trinidad, I've always found myself doodling in, my notebooks or on writable things around the house, which my mom, of course, never really appreciated, nor my teachers. But I remember my course or my ideology changing as a child, maybe when I was around like 6, 7, or 8, and my aunt bought me a Ren and Stimpy comic book. This is going way, way, way back. And she brought that to me, and this was the first time, I think, as far as I'm concerned, because of course, you watch cartoons and you watch a lot of other entertainment things growing up as a child, but I think this was like the first time I ever really saw a comic book. And when you think about subject matter, Ren and Stimpy for like an 8-year-old, it's kind of pushing it a little bit, but I was a little bit enthralled. I was like, this is cool. There's imagery, and there's some text that I can read and kind of get a feel for how the story is going. So that's my earliest memory, tying me into comics itself. And then I moved to the States when I was 10, so this is like 1997, not like it was 1997. And as I grew up, I did my best to be exposed to a lot of the books out there as much as I could. I didn't really read a lot of Marvel and DC stuff, but I had a lot of Image books specifically. Your early Cyberforce and those kind of guys. And then, of course, when my introduction into manga and anime, by the time I hit middle school, that's when everything changed at that point. Because oh my goodness, you can publish black and white stuff and it can still be good. So that level of exposure and that variety of execution methods as far as the medium is concerned, because you have your Western books being the robust, the big, macho dudes, really complex characters, and at least 5 characters on one page. And then you have your mangas where it's your one shot, first book to book 50, and then everything is done, very clean line work, but it can execute such a concise story. I try to implement that as much as I can. I would find myself after school, I'm talking from 5th grade onward, just drawing these on lined paper, and then when the book is done, tape it on the end with like Scotch tape, and then I'm sitting there like, full of typos, and this artwork's all over the place, man. So that's definitely, I would say, what channeled the origin of my wanting to get into comic books as a whole. Now, Periphery in itself. All right, what is there to be said about that book? Periphery is an action-adventure story. It is not an ongoing story. It has a beginning, middle, and end. This tailors more towards my manga exposure, where a lot of these books are so rich in narrative, but the major aspect behind it is the fact that it finishes. I have no qualms or no beef with Batman, Superman, and your Spider-Mans. These characters, outside of the properties they themselves inhibit, they have that longevity. They are the precursor to everything that exists now. So, when you see these characters that have been drawn since the 1940s still exist today, 60, 70 years on, and they still look the same. They probably killed them once or twice, whatever. That's all well and good. Myself, as a storyteller, it starts, it finishes, and we move on. So with Periphery, with Periphery being as successful in my own right, and my first attempt at a full-on narrative as such, I wanted to make sure that it encompassed that continuity in such a way that once I tell the story over a period of however many books it takes to tell it, it stops. And this book is an action adventure story based around one specific city in it's a fake city in the Atlantic Northeast, in Delaware actually. What took place about 20 years prior to the beginning of the series was a very detrimental incident. Some kind. I don't want to go too much into it because all of that gets explained as as books come out. So, a very major incident happened to the city that caused its infrastructure to collapse substantially. Going forward, now when the protagonist herself, Amanda, is introduced, she has to traverse to the city because she's looking for clues as to what happened to her mom, who happened to disappear around the same time. Now, initially, when you read the books, it gives off that post-apocalyptic feel, but it genuinely isn't. Really, where the story takes place in Horus is the only derelict city on the planet. The rest of it, everything else is just fine. So, as the book continues on, she makes this quest to the city, looking for clues and whatnot, and she's befriended by a robot called a Power Man. A brief description of that is you can think of them as anthropomorphic construction vehicles, essentially. They're meant to do a considerable amount of heavy lifting. They have all their tools, everything that they need, all within them. They're big robots, so you can imagine having at least 5 of these guys building a building compared to 2-3 cranes, a bunch of caterpillars and whatnot. The cost effectiveness and time frame of which is completely unheard of. So Granite Industrial is a company that is responsible for that, and what they do, they go around to these cities and help build their infrastructure. Like, let's use an example, like Detroit. Like, if they were to exist at this time, they would go to Detroit and say, hey, this is what's happening, here's what you can do to bring revenue back into your city, utilizing our techniques. And with these powerments, it takes no time at all. So you can imagine going from beginning of the year to the end of the year, cities that were downtrodden, homes gone into foreclosure, giant skyscrapers that are derelict, all of that just gone. And you have businesses, and now with the impact that Granite themselves could make on these cities, these other companies will now follow through. It's like, oh my God, what Granite touched, let's get our businesses going there. So that's essentially how they would work. But long story short, yeah. So as it's an ongoing quest that she's trying to figure out what happened to her mom that disappeared 20 years prior to the book starting. There's a new book now, a new proposal book that I'm working on. And this one's actually really big because this is a subject matter that I have never touched, and it is extremely subjective and extremely personal to me. This book is called Ribbon. It is a socio-political drama based around an activist group that has blatantly made it clear to our congressional system that things need to change for the American economy. No longer or no more should we be subjected to these political incumbents whom are backed by some of the most detrimental and degrading organizations on this planet, preaching or standing on these pedestals of hope and prosperity for the people, when 8 years later you go into office with a laundry list of things to get done. You could only get 2 in your 2 terms that you're in office because you're always gridlocked by Congress. So it's one of these things where, in order for change to be made, it can't be done by just putting someone else who says the right thing, because we've already seen that. This book also is extremely present day. We have I don't want to say buffoon. The guy he's a millionaire, whatever. He did his work, he did it well. But we have people who are so blatantly obscure running for office and winning. We have people whose intellect doesn't necessarily seem to stretch that far beyond high school and winning. We have people who have run in the past whose financiers are multinational conglomerates, people who take resources and siphon energy from other countries, having, tax havens that don't even pay tax in the country they themselves are representing. All of these things that are just such obvious follies in our presidential and congressional system that just can no longer stand. So in my book, this activist group has decided to take matters into their own hands. I would like to utilize the example of Think Anonymous and V for Vendetta, but just very, very successful in their execution methods. And they are utilizing an assassin to send a message during this current presidential campaign, where they are attacking the leading presidential incumbent on the other side. Doesn't matter which, Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter. In such a way, not going to go into too much details, but they are attacking this individual in such a way as to make a point. Each level up, one person per whatever group is helping this man in his millions and millions of dollars spent for his presidency. Each member of those groups is being attacked in such a way as to make a point and make it clear that if change is to be made, if our voices need to be heard more, action needs to be taken. So this book, like I said, is just extremely, I don't want to say risky. I mean, come on, I'm not the first guy to have done it, but this is, when you look at the list of stuff that I've done, nothing like this has ever existed. If you are interested in reading or seeing or following all of my work, can be found on chadbaptiste.com. That's CHAD, B as in boy, A, P as in Paul, T as in Tom, I as in igloo, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, E as in everyone.com. I have a very long last name. I'm sorry. I'm greatly humbled. I'm greatly welcomed. Thank you so very much.